Well, BMW's done it again. They've taken a coupe, added 2 doors, and still call it a coupe. Doesn't make much sense, but does that really matter when the end result is so good looking? This is the BMW M850i Gran Coupe, and it's the 4-door version of a 2-door car.
This is not the first time that BMW has given a car a name that really doesn't make any sense. In fact, the Germans love to sort of change up the meaning of names. I mean, they take the 8 Series Coupe, add 2 doors, and now it's a Gran Coupe? That really doesn't make much sense. However, nonsensical nomenclature aside, it's actually rather ironic because on the road, this car makes so much sense, more so than its coupe or convertible siblings. When the 8 Series Coupe and convertible first debuted, they were pretty heavily criticized for not being the driver's cars that a lot of enthusiasts had hoped for. While good to drive and very fast, they just weren't the engaging sports cars that a lot of journalists and enthusiasts really expected the 8 Series to be. They tipped the scales far more towards luxury than sportiness. And that's okay because they're big GT cars. But I would say that in this, it makes even more sense. The addition of 2 doors and 2 extra seats really just makes this car feel right. It sort of feels like this is what it should have been from the beginning. Now, before I get any comments reminding me that the coupe and convertible also have 2 back seats, I've driven both cars a lot, and you can fit human adults in the back seat of neither. Sure, they have back seats, but I'm only 5'9", and I could not sit behind myself in either car. The back seats of both 8 Series coupe and convertible are basically useless unless they're for just very small children. And then, are they really functioning back seats at that point if they're extremely limited in who they can carry? And even small children might be uncomfortable on long trips. They're not big back seats at all. And I put a child seat in the back seat of a convertible, and the front passenger, my wife, her knees were touching the dashboard because of how far forward the passenger seat had to be to fit the child seat. In this, not only can I sit behind myself in perfect comfort with plenty of knee room and headroom, for long distances, I can fit a child seat behind the passenger seat, and my wife's knees are perfectly comfortable. So this is far more usable as a daily driver than either the coupe or convertible. And that just makes it so much better, because otherwise, it's the same car.
And once you realize that, you also realize that the Gran Coupe is the best version of the 8 Series. It's the best looking, it's the most practical, and it drives exactly the same as the other 2.
Naturally, when you make a car more practical, it gets a little bit worse to drive. It becomes a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit slower. It's just not quite as good to drive as its less practical sibling, typically. However, in this, you lose nothing by way of performance or comfort to its coupe or convertible siblings. In fact, the slightly longer wheelbase might make this car actually a bit better to drive at high speed.
It's also every bit as fast. Under the hood is still the same 4.4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 as the other cars, so it still makes 523 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque, meaning it's still very, very fast.
Straight line performance in this car is seriously shocking. You put your foot down and it's almost like alarming how fast it is. It also comes with a pretty great V8 soundtrack, although quite a lot of it is probably coming through the speakers, which ruins the experience a little bit, but ultimately it still sounds good, so I guess who really cares at that point?
Thankfully, it sounds good from the outside.
However, just like its coupe and convertible siblings, its handling is inherently not excellent. It's not bad by any means. It's actually quite capable, and it's very stable at high speed, and it is semi-fun to chuck around. But it's still a big, heavy car, and it still has steering that I don't absolutely love. Now that part is interesting, because there's something I couldn't quite put my finger on about a lot of steering in modern BMWs, until I read a post by Jason Camisa. And he noted that the steering weight doesn't change much when you actually turn the wheel. And that was it. Voila! the light bulb went on. That's what it is. Because the steering weight doesn't change as much as it should as you turn the wheel, you don't really get a sense, you can't really judge what the front wheels are doing. Yes, there's no feel or feedback, but that's sort of every performance car nowadays. But because the steering wheel isn't really giving you any additional weighting as you turn it, it just feels really lifeless and video game-like. It does a little bit in the 8 Series, and that's good, but it's not enough. It's not enough to really judge what this very big, heavy car is doing, and that kind of makes you uneasy to push it. And you don't want to push this car hard because you can't really judge what the front end is doing. And that's a little disappointing. However, in this car's defense, it is a luxury car first. This is a GT car, not a performance car. So in that sense, it is forgivable. This car is not designed to slice up a canyon road. This car is a leather-lined intercontinental ballistic missile. It's designed to get you great distances very quickly in incredible comfort, and it does that very well. Now, I do have one big issue with this car, and that's its price. This car, as tested, is $122,000. That is a lot of money. It's very expensive, and I don't know if you should spend 122 grand on this. I like the car a lot, I really do. I think it's great looking. I really do like its interior. I think cabin-wise, it's worth north of 6 figures. I think it's a wonderful cabin. It looks great. The materials are excellent. The technology is top-notch. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to spend time. I think that's worth it. But there's just something about the package overall that doesn't seem $122,000 to me. And I'm not really quite sure why, to be honest with you. It just doesn't seem like it's special enough to be 122 grand. More to the point, I think there's actually a BMW that's more worth this money than this car is, and that's the BMW M5. It's significantly faster, it handles much better, it feels more special, it's not that much less comfortable, and it's a little bit cheaper. Sure, this car is better looking, but if you really want to spend 6 figures on a car that can be used every day, feel incredibly special, be brutally fast, and still carry children in the back and be a practical daily, to me, the BMW M5 is the better buy. This looks better, but I'd rather have substance over style.